Now, for most of you who don't know, my mother is a Seventh-day Adventist. And being a Seventh-day Adventist, or living at home with a Seventh-day Adventist, would have brought up several interesting situations. Now, this story goes back to a little bit when I just came from England. Now, imagine I've been living by myself for a couple of years, have my own freedom, used to doing things my way. I was about 27 at the time. That means, a big man. Move out of the house, living by myself, I'm a big man. When I finished my master's in England, I came back to Jamaica. There were some problems, and I felt that the best decision would be to stay with my mother. When I returned home, things got a little bit more interesting, because usually what happens is that my mother was the one who was very religious, always teaching me about the Sabbath and what is right and wrong. So a whole lot of my thoughts about religion was really through her influence. She's the person who was there. And if there was an award that could be given out for Seventh-day Adventists of the Year, my mother would get it. Real Seventh-day Adventist. Vesper. Sabbath evening. Going up to Hope Gardens to go and meditate, pray. Very dedicated woman. I started to visit CGI and started to learn more about the truth. And as you know, we differ in belief between the Seventh-day Adventists and what we believe today. Also, I started to challenge my mother on certain beliefs that she had. The house became one of very healthy debate, as I should put it. Healthy debate. One of these debates started over alcohol. Now, I'm a Bailey's lover. That was my thing. When I went to England, Bailey's was just my thing, I went to the pub. Everybody was talking about, this Bailey's from Ireland and how good it was. So I became accustomed to it and something that I liked. One year, I won a bottle of Bailey's from a project that I've been doing. So, at the end of the year, you do really well, and them say, all right, Ray, thank you for the help with the project. Here's your bottle of Bailey's. No, I'm very happy now, because I'm going to now take this home. But because I know how my mother feels about alcohol, I said, all right, I'm a big man. After all, I'm here to pay the bills, So it's not like I'm completely worthless. I pay the bills, I pay the light bill, the water bill. But I don't want to offend my mother. So I'm going to put this bottle of Bailey's in my room. And furthermore, I'm going to put it in the bathroom that she don't come in and buck up on it. There was this week, very hectic week. Hello, sir. You all right? One day there was this very hectic week. Remember, this bottle of Bailey's is very special. It has 2 glasses. It came in a very special case. Never been pulled before. And I said to myself, you know what? I was going to have a one day where I'm going to relax. Chill out. So I go up into my room. I was like, all right, you know what I'm going to have? This bottle of Bailey's. So as I start to take this bottle of Bailey's out of my bathroom in this hidden place, bottle starts to feel light. And I said to myself, this bottle don't pull. It's supposed to feel a little bit heavier than this. But it feels very light. And then furthermore, the top of it is now pulled. So I start going into Sherlock Holmes mode now, full-scale investigation, because I want to know who could have really drink out all, and not even offer me a glass. The thing is empty. Empty. So I start to say to myself now, I'm wondering, what if it's my helper really come in here and take sip, until this thing's done? But I said that wouldn't make no sense because you're leaving the bottle. Thank you yourself. So, and I'm saying to myself, no, man. No, she wouldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. Trusted her over years. I see her handle money. Wouldn't do that. So I started to say to myself, no, but mommy don't drink. So who would I read? So I started go down and say, I started get upset now. Come and say, imagine I come home for the one little bottle, just one little glass, just sit down and enjoy myself. It don't pull, and it's empty. I go downstairs to my mom. I said, Mommy, my bottle of Bailey is empty. She starts to smile. So of course, I'm like, this is nothing to smile about. We have a very serious situation happening here. Right? She starts to smile. So I said, Mommy, by chance, just by chance, do you know what happened to this bottle of Bailey's? She started to laugh. I said, no, man, this I get serious now. So I said, Mommy, you really going to show me my Bailey's? Explain to what happened. So my mother then goes into this, Ray, no, drinking is a sin. So I come to CJ and I said, show me this in the scriptures. Because now we have a serious debate. Long debate going, she talked to me about drunkenness. I said, yes, but that's taking it outside of moderation. He never said, don't drink. We need to understand. So she goes, my Seventh-day Adventist belief doesn't teach me this. I said, Mommy, but we differ on so much things. I've never seen you react in this way that you're going to impose your belief on my Baileys. There must be something deeper. And she starts to tell me now that she's been praying about it ever since she saw this bottle in my room. Yes. So I'm saying to myself, praying about what? I don't understand. So my mother's maiden name is James. She started to say, well, Ray, you know, our family has a curse. It's called the James curse. So I was like, what James curse are you talking about? She goes, your grandfather owned a bar. And he used to drink all the time. And, you know, he used to be very abusive towards me. And I even have a scar from a bottle that he threw at me one day. So I was like, wow, that's really sad. I'm sorry to hear that. Oh, what do I have to do with my buckle of Baileys, though? I don't understand. So she goes, his son, your grandfather, also has a problem. You know, he's an alcoholic as well. And I know my grandfather. If anybody hear about Keith James from St. Catherine, you always hear about the man who come and buy everybody white rum at the bar. That was my grandfather. Ray, how you doing today? I'm okay, Grandpa. Life treats you good? Not so much. Come and buy you a drink, man. This is just his attitude. Alcoholic. I was drinking very much until the day he died. His cousin, who grew up in the same area, was also an alcoholic. Last name, James. So I started to say to myself, okay, Mommy, I can see that you're suffering from something emotional, but I still don't understand what that has to do with my buckle of Baileys. So she said, it's a curse, it's a family curse, and I have to pray for you. I said, all right, Mommy, let us logically, so this is my first reaction, let's just logically think this out. You see a buckle of Baileys in the bathroom a couple months ago. You come back into the same bathroom, and the buckle don't pull. The level has not gone down. This must tell you that I'm not in here drinking. I'm not an alcoholic then. You don't see me, you don't smell it on my breath, you don't see me staggering around, you don't see me, as a matter of fact, I work very hard, I pay the bills, I go to church, and you don't see me drinking. What is the problem? So she goes, yes, but it's a family curse. I said, second of all, my name is Williams, I don't name James. So please just keep your family curse to yourself. Right? Williams, you is a James. You probably have the problem. I don't have the problem. Right? And I said to her, Mommy, you know, as a Christian, I think you should start praying about things that I actually do struggle with. There are things that I do struggle with. Alcoholism is not one of them. But there are other things that I've been trying to overcome. And I think your prayers will be better served there. And it's the first time I started to think about my Christianity in that way. When I started to match it up with, alcoholics. It's almost like I'm a sinaholic. I'm addicted to this thing that I can't stop. So today's sermon is going to be about sin as an addiction. And it's something that I want you to think about. Now, the interesting about this message is that it really does apply to everybody in here. But most of us might think to ourselves, it doesn't apply to us. But it really does apply to every person in here. Here's why it starts to apply to us. First thing, what actually is the definition of an addict? Have you ever thought about that before? What is the definition of an addict? Sometimes when we think about that phrase addict, we think about somebody who loves something bad. They just want it all the time. And they can't control themselves, but they take pleasure in it. And that's actually not true. That's not what the definition of addict is. Addict means to devote or surrender oneself to something habitual or obsessively. To devote or surrender oneself to something habitually or obsessively. So if you look at the definition and say, okay, you surrender oneself to something habitual, the question I start to ask myself now is, if sin is something that I'm trying to get rid of, that I know, as Ricardo had said, sin is bad, and I've not been able to stop this thing. Previously, before I was called into the church, I used to habitually sin. Before I knew what the truth was, I was sinning all the time. When I started my walk with Christ, things changed. But the point is that I used to do these things habitually. It was a part of me as I was growing up. When you were children, as you come up in life, you learn and observe sin. We used to do things until you were called. Things changed. So the question I'm going to ask you now is to go through, were you a sinaholic at any point in your life? Did you habitually surrender yourself to sin before you were called? And even now, do we habitually surrender ourselves to sin? And when you think about sin, people say, no, but there are different sins, and I might not struggle with this one, but I struggle with this one. So it doesn't really apply to me. But the truth about alcohol is that you have white rum, you have red rum. The point is that it doesn't really matter, it's sin. So when we start thinking about sin in that way, we ask ourselves the question, in any point in our life, were we sinaholic? And the truth is that if we know the scriptures and understand how sin is transmitted, we're all born with something inside of us that predisposes us to sin. And I want you to turn with me to Romans 5:12. And there's something interesting about DNA that I'm going to speak to later, but first we must understand the starting point. Romans 5:12. Therefore, as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, and so they spread to all men because all men sinned. What is interesting about this passage is it says that sin entered the world through one man. And then it spread to all men. And if we know the state of sin, we understand that we're born with a sinful nature. 1 Corinthians 5:20 backs up the point. 1 Corinthians 5:20. But now is Christ risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. For since by man came by death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. The truth about sin is that the moment that Adam sinned, the sinful nature of man entered the world. And as descendants of Adam, it also means that sin, the sinful nature, also spread through you. The moment you were born, you had the sinful nature. The question I'm asking you is, at any point in your life, were you ever a sinaholic? Have you ever surrendered yourself to habitually sinning before you were called, after you were called? It's a very important question, and you see the importance as I go through the presentation. Now, Adam and Eve had children. What are their names? Cain, Abel, Seth, and others that were unnamed, right? Now, Cain, and I want to use the case of Cain to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So let's turn to Genesis 4, 1-7. This is after the fall. Adam and Eve would have sinned. They had children. The story of Cain starts to give us the picture of the sinful state. In Genesis 4, 1-7, something interesting happens where Cain is concerned. Verse 1, now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and when it says know Eve, we mean, know, as in him know her. Not that he met her for the first time, he know her, all right. And she conceived, and before Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again, she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a tiller of the ground. In the course of time, Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel brought the firstlings of his flock, and their fat portions. And the Lord had great regard for Abel and his offering. Verse 5. But for Cain and his offering, he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. What starts to get interesting is what happens in verse 6. The Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Very interesting thing happening. Adam and Eve sinned. They had sons. Cain seems to have this nature inside of him that predisposes him to sin. He is told by God that he must master this thing. But Cain doesn't master it. Later on we see in verses 8-11 that Cain actually commits murder by taking his brother out to the field and murders him. The sinful nature starts to show as it spreads through mankind. This is a very important question because we've always battled with this idea of sin. When we're talking about people who are addicted to sin, we have to understand, how did sin arrive? How does sin spread? When you are born, are you just a regular person? Are you predisposed to sin? What about your parents? What about how you were grown up? Do they have any effect on your life whatsoever? When you were born, is there anything in their DNA that would have changed you? Was Cain's DNA changed? How did he understand this nature of sin? Now, there's an interesting article that I read in Science Focus. And the title of the article is The Human Brain Hardwired to Sin. The human brain hardwired to sin. Now, what the research tried to do, as we understand, first of all, our sinful nature, is that they were to put people in certain situations. I ever see on TV when they have these helmets on top of people's head and it measures their brain activity, and when they do certain things, how it lights up. That's exactly what they did. And they tested different situations for sin. Now, I'm going to go through a couple of tests that they did. First one that they did was lust. And listen to what they're saying. It says, these are the challenges faced by neurologists at Northwestern. That's where the research was done. Who are trying to understand what goes on in the brains of men and women. By the way, this is not for men and women, and the topic is lust. When we have feelings of lust. You know, a lot of people believe that this only happens to men, but no, it happens to women too. Right, women? Yes? It's sounding very quiet, but we know, don't worry. The research tells us. We're well aware. Their research is certainly unusual and reveals that we're hardwired to sin. This is what they're claiming, and I'm going to explain how. It says the scans show that in both sexes, not just men, in both sexes, the limbic system buried deep inside our brains fires up when we're watching something we take a fancy to. Structures like the nucleus accumbens involved in pleasure and craving are the heart of the system. So there's a particular part in your brain for pleasure and craving that seems to be at the center of this. And remember I asked the question, do our parents pass something on to us that makes us susceptible to sin? And there's an obvious reason why. So they're saying lust is somehow intertwined with the need to procreate or to produce offspring. So it's there for a purpose. But the point is that there's something inside of the brain that lights up when we're in those situations. It says, this is the enjoyable face of sin. We take pleasure in that situation. Gluttony, next sin, next batch of persons, testing the brain once again. Is there something about our brains or our DNA makeup that make us more susceptible to sin? It says the reward circuitry in our brains also lights up when we eat. So for those foodies that are in the audience, them say when you eat food and it tastes good, the brain lights up. When you find these things rewarding because of the evolutionary logic, you want organisms to reproduce, so you want them to eat. But eating itself is not a bad thing. It says throughout most of our history, life was very difficult, and these were the conditions that shaped our brains. Now, what the researchers are trying to intimate is that throughout history, as you go through experiences, your brain is somehow shaped, changed, somehow changed. Very interesting. I want you to pay attention because this has implications for sin and how sin impacts our families, how sin impacts our children, how our bodies impact our decisions. It says, so what was once a dial setting for self-preservation in terms of eating is now a dial setting for sin. Remember, they're dealing with gluttony. Next one they looked at, sloth. For those of you who like to procrastinate, stay at home, not do anything, sloth, this covers you. Okay? Not as I'm throwing any stones or pointing the fingers, I'm just saying. This is what they define it as. So he says, the tendency to do absolutely nothing has its roots in our evolutionary past. You never knew when your next big meal was, and therefore you needed to rest. The calories you don't burn in activity, you could use for the growth process to repair your body. So what they're saying is that because of hard times in the past, you never knew the next time that your meal was coming. So your body is hardwired to stay still, not do anything, so that you can preserve the calories to ensure that you still live on. That's what it was in the past. But once again, what the researchers are saying is that experiences that you go through in terms of how your body operates changes your brain pattern. The next one that the researchers tried was envy. Now listen to this. They said the area of the brain that processes envy also processes physical pain. It says envy hurts. That's what is registered. When we're envious, it hurts. There's something painful about the experience. The important message from the study is that there was the biggest reason the volunteers and the students showed is that there's a positive and constructive element to envy. It motivates us to improve our own performance. So if you think about people who are very competitive, CGI people especially are very competitive. Sports Day will prove that. Very competitive, motivated by competition. It makes you want to do better. We don't want Auntie Margaret coming up here singing those songs to us about how we flop and how we lost and all that kind of thing. And it's something motivates us to want to do better. But the interesting thing is that they say that it has a negative side. It could also make us want to do something bad to the person, to happen to the other person. So it can induce immoral behavior or even a criminal act. Remember, these are studies just on the brain, on the brain. Pride. Now, what's interesting about the experiment with pride is that they said there's a certain part of the brain that is linked to pride. They have a magnetic machine that what they will do is that they would turn it on and it will stop your brain from sending certain signals. So if they point at that area of the brain, you would stop sending certain signals. Now, what the experiment did is that they asked persons how they view themselves to their friends. Machine is off. The response was, I'm good at what I do, but my friends are not as good as me. Those were some of the responses. Machine is off. They turned the machine off, targeting that part of the brain, stopping certain signals from being sent. The responses were different. They started to be more flattering of their friends. And what the researchers are saying is that this part of the brain seems to have something linked with pride. Wrath. Anger. What researchers are saying is that the more you're angry, that part of the brain that controls anger, the shorter the path to that part of the brain is the more quick you are to get angry. And over the years, anger has shortened that path to that area that gives us anger. That means that we're becoming more angry. I mean, Jamaicans might have the shortest distance when you really think about it. And the more children we have, and if this thing is really true that it does pass down, then it means our children are also developing with this shorter path in the brain. Now, this doesn't mean that you must sin, but it means that your body is making you more and more predisposed to sin. Chemicals inside your brain affect lust. For example, you would have heard the term low libido or high libido, right? Persons have different chemicals. So if you have a high libido, the chemicals that are being produced makes you have greater sexual urges. Chemicals are low, you have less sexual urges. Now, what was interesting about this particular article is that although all those things that I've called out are hardwired, the question must be asked, so can you learn sin? Can you learn it as a matter of your environment or grow up in it? They said yes. When they tested greed, they said that they could not identify an area of the brain that greed came with. And therefore their theory is that greed is something that is learnt in your environment. You're nurtured. It's not nature, nurture. A second article that I read, looking at DNA, and this is where things get even more interesting. The article is entitled, intra-individual change over time in DNA. What this means is that they're testing if DNA changes. Does the DNA that make you you change over time? In their research, they said that persons, when they get older, their DNA changes about 20%. Let me tell you the implications for that. It means that as we go in different situations, the emotions that we feel change our DNA as we grow older. When we have children, it therefore means that this change in DNA is also passed down. So when you're thinking about your own lives and whether you're sinning and how well you're doing and the emotions that you let bother you, you must remember that it has an impact on you physically. And this physical thing is passed down through generations. Very interesting. So I'm hoping that people are starting to think about or reflect on their parents. Were your parents a particular way? Did you come and behave some sort of way like your parents? Are there certain similarities that you're seeing that you and your sister seem to have, or your brother? Something in your family that seems to be common? These are some things that we need to start thinking about. Now, I hope this question is getting closer to home. Were you ever a sinaholic in your life? How does sin really get transmitted? Is it nature? Is it nurture? Research is showing that it's both ways. There are some things about our body that are passed down to our children that you can't help. You can't help. But there are also some things that are learned as we grow up as children and in the world. And the more we learn and experience is the more it changes our DNA. And therefore our children are also affected through our experiences. So when I ask you the question, have you ever been a sinaholic? Stop thinking about it as something that you have to enjoy. Because the truth about addicts is that a lot of them don't enjoy being addicts. They don't want to be this way. I call you a sinner. I call myself a sinner. Is this the way you want to be? Is it something that you want to change? Is it something that you can overcome? Have we been able to overcome it? Have we been habitually surrendering ourselves over the years? And in case you thought that being a sinaholic is something that people don't struggle with, I use Paul as an excellent example of somebody who is what I consider a recovering sinaholic. And I'm going to show you the importance of those two words. A recovering sinaholic. Paul, the author of a lot of the New Testament, who is basically our instructor through the Word of God. 2 Corinthians 12, 6 to 10 outlines the struggle that Paul himself went through, as we do as Christians today. Here in verse 6, Paul says, "Though if I wish to boast, I shall not be a fool, for I shall be speaking the truth. But I refrain from it, so that no one may think more of me than he sees in me or hears from me. And to keep me from being too elated by the abundance of revelations, a thorn was given to me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan, to harass me, to keep me from being elated. 3 times I besought the Lord about this, that it should leave me. 3 times. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. I will all the more gladly boast of my weaknesses, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." Now, for those of us who think we're very strong Christians, these things don't apply to us. The greatest of our teachers, Paul, here is struggling. Paul, once again, in outlining this struggle, does so in Romans 7 and Romans 8. And we turn to Romans 7 really quickly so we can understand what Paul himself is going through and ask ourselves the question, are we going through the same things in life? Are we going through the same things in life? Verse 14, Romans 7. We know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Sounding more like a true addict. Doing the things that he hates. Struggling, not wanting to go back a particular way. Now, if I do what I do not want to do, I agree that the law is good. So then, it is no longer I that do it, but sin which dwells in me. For I know that nothing good dwells in me, that is, in my flesh. Ask yourself the question, were you ever a sinaholic, even before you were saved? I will what is right, but I cannot do it. For I do not do the good I want, but the evil I do not want is what I do. Now if I do what I do not want to do, it is no longer I that do it, but sin which dwells in me. For I delight in the law of God, in my inmost self, but I see my members with another law at war with the law of my mind, making me captive to the law of sin, which dwells in my members. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? Thanks be to God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then I of myself serve the law of God with my mind, with my flesh I serve the law of sin. Paul to me sounds like somebody who is struggling with something. It is not something that we enjoy, but the truth is that there's something inside of us that we have inherited. And you have to remember who Paul was. You know, a lot of times we see Paul as this great teacher, somebody who went out and risked his life, somebody who went out and taught good things, doing all these miracles. But remember where Paul is coming from. I asked you the question, were you a sinaholic ever before you started to have a walk? In Acts 7, 5, 58 to 59, we see where Paul was present at the stoning of Stephen. Think about where Paul is coming from. In Acts 8, 1 to 2, and Saul was consenting to his death. And on that day a great persecution arose in the church in Jerusalem, and they were all scattered throughout the region of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles. Devout men buried Stephen and made great lamentation over him. But Saul was ravaging the church and entered the house after house. He dragged off men and women and committed them to prison. Acts 9:1. But Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogue at Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, remember the psychology of Paul, what Paul was doing. He was seeking out people. He was murdering them. These were believers. Paul was not yet converted. The question is, was Paul a sinaholic? Is it something that was inside of him that he kept on doing habitually? Then he changed. He changed. Now, as a recovering sinaholic myself, I know some of the questions that people ask. Some of the things that we say to ourselves that make us think that we're not affected. Thoughts like, I sin a little, but it's not out of control. I have it under control. I can stop at any time I want. I just haven't put my full energy into it as yet. Others are doing worse than I am. Therefore, it can't be that bad. Some people might even get in a situation, they sin first. Therefore, to reply in sin is justified because them do it first. I have worse sins than this one. Therefore, me focusing on this one is not that important right now. I know it says that we should do this in this particular way, but things and times are different now. Things have changed. Therefore, what I'm doing is not that bad. God will understand. How about this one? God will understand this one time. It's okay. He will understand this one time. Or even, and I know a lot of persons have reached this point already, everything is going bad. Everything is going bad. So it don't matter which sin I do right now. Everything is going bad. Whether they pick 5, 10, it don't matter. Everything is going bad, so can't focus. Or even the popular, this one sin leads to these other 5 sins. Therefore, if I fix this one sin, all these other 5 will just drop away. Are these some of the thoughts that you're having? I can tell you, if you're having these thoughts, they're dangerous thoughts. And maybe this affects you more than you think it does. Reflect on it. Now, I call Paul a recovering sinaholic. Recovering. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to an AA class, but there's a specific reason why they use recovering versus recovered. When they talk about alcoholics, the question is always asked, can you fully recover from this addiction? Are you recovered? Is it ever really beaten? Recovering. What is the difference? They use the term specifically, and it means certain things. Now, the term recovered means that you're over this thing, you have it beaten, it's no God. Recovering means that you realize to yourself, it's not fully over, but I'm still in the process. How you refer to yourself is important. And I'll show you a little bit of the disadvantages and advantages. I like the word recovering. Here are some of the dangers of thinking to yourself that you have completely overcome sin. You're no longer haunted by this thing. It says the individual may wrongly assume this to mean that at some time in the future they will be able to act safe again. Do you assume that with sin? After you have overcome? Do you think that in the future you'll be able to safely just go through life, not having to worry about sinning ever again? Or are you recovering? Are you recovering? Some people may use the idea of being recovered as an excuse not to put enough effort into their new life. When we go through a situation that we've overcome a particular sin, do we put it down and say, you know what, I don't deal with this one, so I don't really have to check on it as much or come back to it? I've gone on to the other things that I struggle with. Or am I recovering? This is still a problem I have to track. Just a danger in the little word. Now, what are some of the benefits using the term recovering as a label? It's a constant reminder to the individual that they can never live like a normal person. Recovering sinaholic. It means that you cannot live your life like persons who are not called. Once you have started this walk, everything about your walk is now different. Everything is different. You can't. It's just not possible. You can't live your life the same as other persons. Recovering Sinaholic. It implies that there is much more work to be done. And in order to keep recovering, the individual will have to keep putting an effort into keeping away from those things. Recovering Sinaholic. Some people begin to enjoy identifying themselves in this way. If they are part of a recovery fellowship, this label will be the thing that holds the group together. Think about that. When people identify with this label, it may increase their motivation to help those who are still struggling with addiction. Recovering. Because you're recovering, you know the danger. And therefore, when you see somebody else in danger, it forces you to reach out to that person. Listen, stop what you're doing. I know the danger. I'm recovering. You also have to do the work that is there. Recovering Sinaholic. Now, Paul warns us about the relapse of sin we have overcome, but he always gives a warning. In Hebrews 10:26 to 27, he says, well, this authorship is disputed. For if we sin deliberately after receiving knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a fearful prospect of judgment and a fury of fire. Paul goes on in 1 Corinthians 9:24. Do you not know that in a race all the runners compete, but only one receives the prize? So run that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but when an imperishable we strive for. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I pummel my body and subdue it, lest after preaching to others, I, myself, should be disqualified. The relapse is always a warning. No matter how much we think we have overcome something, there is a possibility that we can relapse. And therefore, we have to consider ourselves as recovering until that time. We are always recovering. Now, our church has been growing spiritually. And a program that we've started on the Monday night meetings, third Mondays, are spiritual workshops. We started a couple of months ago with a Sinners Anonymous class, where we gave 12 steps if you want to try and overcome sin. I'll go through the 12 steps a little bit later. But today what I'm going to be doing, you know I love crowd interaction. I don't feel like I should be doing all the work. But today what I'm going to be doing is kind of creating that environment of this Sinners Anonymous class. Because apart from these 12 steps, what is important for us as sinners is that we have support groups to help each other with different things that we're struggling with. And I was at the Monday night meeting testimony and prayer night, and I heard Sarah give a plea. And she was saying that, there are certain things that I struggle with. And if I could get help from other persons, then that would be of great help for me. Because there are some things that I don't know, maybe I'm doing it wrong. But to hear from other persons who are recovering from the same thing would help. And I sat down and I meditated on that. And that's something that we don't do enough of. Have little support groups for persons. If you deal with anger, probably you want to understand how other persons would have dealt with anger. If you deal with a lack of forgiveness, probably you want to understand how other persons would have viewed it. Sometimes it goes a long way, along with reading your Bible and fasting, just to have that support group. Right? So, third Mondays is something that we're going to be implementing, and today we're going to be kickstarting a little session. And I just want to share a little bit about my own story about getting help. So, I would have been going through a lot over the last year. And I struggled with a lot of things. And I got help from somebody in the church. Right? Denise has been there for me a whole lot. And some of the things that I struggled with for this last year, I struggled with anger. I struggled with forgiveness. So this was actually me being a Christian, struggling with somebody does something to you and you genuinely trying to forgive them. Anger. Somebody has done something to you, you not trying to respond in a particular way. Pride. Why is it that people feel like they can do certain things to you? Get away with it. Lack of faith. When you're going through your valley, sometimes you question if really and truly the God who loves you would really be putting you through this. And that has been my year. I would call it a mini depression. I remember people used to ask me if I'm okay. Patrick used to ask me all the time, Ray, all right? I say, yeah, Patrick, I'm okay. And I mean I'm okay, but I'm not okay. But I'm okay, and I'm breathing. But I remember Patrick used to come to me and say, nah, Ray, something is wrong with you. I said, Patrick, I can't talk about it. But one day I was talking to Denise, and she asked me a question, and then something inside me decided to start opening up. And since that time, she has been there for me through many phone calls, encouraging me, and, just giving me advice. And that has benefited me significantly, because now what I realize is that as I'm recovering from these things, it allowed me to help other persons. I could then counsel other people about how to deal with forgiveness, how to deal with anger. I know what it feels like. Believe me, more than you think. Sometimes when I talk about my struggle with anger, I think you guys think it's a joke, but it's not a joke. It's a very serious thing. But the point is that we're all here struggling with different things, and we will struggle with a lot of things from before. And it's time that we start to help each other. If we really see ourselves as people who are recovering from sin because of our call, it should spark something inside of us, making us want to help. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a Sinners Anonymous group right here. Sinners Anonymous group right here. One of the things that helped me is Psalms 139, 23 to 24. And when I hear this, it helps me to prepare myself. It says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there be any wicked way in me. And lead me in the way everlasting. What it allowed me to do is start to think to myself, the sins that I struggle with, are they coming from my parents? Is it something that I was socialized? Where did I first see it? Where did I first learn it? These are the questions that I'm going to ask us today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time. Don't worry, I'll be going first. And what I want you to write down, as we've always been doing, is some of those things that you struggle with, that you can't seem to overcome. You're still struggling with it. Possibly, a situation comes, and you can't help yourself but go into it. Somebody come, and you just get angry. And you get angry. And you get angry. Somebody does something to you, you have a struggle forgiving them. You have a struggle forgiving them. You have a struggle forgiving them. Somebody says something to you, pride chips in. Somebody says something to you, pride chips in. Habitually, we're struggling with this over and over again. So I'm just going to give you 7 minutes. Just write down those things that you're struggling with. I'll write down mine, and I'll be the first member of the Sinners Anonymous class. I'm going to teach you how it goes. There's some things that you guys have to say. You have to make me feel safe, right? Has anybody ever seen one of these classes before? No? Come and say hi, Ray. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to give you about 5 minutes just to think about it, reflect. So we're going to attempt this Sinners Anonymous class. And what the Sinners Anonymous class is going to be focused on is individual things that we might be addicted to or that we are recovering from. So how it's going to work? I'm going to call out a particular thing that I struggle with. If you have it on your paper, you stand along with me. You're going to be my support group. And you're going to ask me some questions. I'm going to talk about myself. Don't worry, you don't have to talk. I'm going to talk about myself. Right? Now, remember, when you say recovering Sinaholic, it means something that you would have struggled with and you might have it under control, but it's something that you used to struggle with. Something that you used to do habitually as a sin. Everybody's clear? So when I call out this one, you're going to look on your paper and you're going to see if it's there. You're going to stand and be my support group. And please remember, it doesn't mean that you're doing this right now. It means something you could have potentially did before you came into the church. So we don't have to fast in people's business and say, that one over there is doing this. No. What I mean is that if you have struggled with this thing from before, you've been baptized, you've got it under control, but you're recovering. Because remember, we're not fully recovered until we have made it into the kingdom. We're recovering. There's always the risk of relapse. Is everybody clear? Clear? All right, let me try it out. Let me see. Okay, so anonymous class, this particular one for this group of people is starting with hate. Struggled some point in your life with hate. Say hate people. Before, don't mean you're doing that now. Hate. All right, good. Stand up, man. We'll see you. I'll catch you. So this means, as a part of this support group, which we're going to have at the Monday nights, this particular group of people are going to form a part of the recovering haters. Right? The recovering haters. That's what they're called. No, but you're recovering. So how it's going to go is that I am new. So I'm going to say, my name is Ray, and I'm a recovering Sinaholic. You guys are supposed to say, hi, Ray. This is my first time to this session. You guys are supposed to make me feel safe. I don't feel safe. It's my first time here. Oh, thank you very much. Now, you're supposed to say to me, Ray, how did this start for you? Okay, very good. So, hatred for me started when I was in prep school. Prep school. Now, I don't know if a lot of you know, but children are very cruel. Very cruel. Very cruel. Right? And at prep school, I used to be on the track team. And there's this one particular time that all the popular guys on the track team were going to Miami Classics. I apparently left my track shoe, which was a very old track shoe because my parents didn't have a lot. But all of them had the newer shoes like Nike and Adidas. And we had to pause the entire bus to go back for my old track shoe. Now when we got my old track shoe, everybody else on the bus started to ridicule me. And this we go back for? And I was like, oh my, but this, you can't afford better than that? And let me tell you something, man. I hated those children. The way they made me feel. You know, I felt like somebody was attacking me. I felt like I wanted to just mash them up. And even after the trip done, I have them up. I can recall their names to this very day. Have them up. Yeah, man, years I struggled with this thing. It affected my entire life. That's the first time I had this interaction with this sin of hatred. You know, I hated them. But that's how it starts for me. And you know, throughout life, I got into different circumstances, and I could see it become a pattern. I learned it readily. I hated people if they did anything bad to me because of the experience. There's nobody to talk to me, to ask me, Ray, how you felt about that? What is going on with you? And I live with this. Did you guys experience that? My support group? You experienced that? So, like, how do I get over it? 'Cause I don't think that's something that I'm over it. You know, Clarky called my name. Sometimes I feel like I want to hate him. But how do I get over something like that? Any suggestion?
Don't take life too seriously. Don't take every comment too seriously.
I don't feel safe. I don't understand.
Don't take every comment so seriously.
No, them never say if them struggling or not. I just me one come up here come say I'm a Sinaholic. Hold on, you struggle? You recover? So you talk. No. You can't help me. Remember, hold on here. Remember, you know. No, but you don't know what I'm going through. You can't understand what I'm going through. Hold on, and I want to make this point. Remember, part of the support group is that when you consider yourself a recovering Sinaholic from hatred, because you're recovering, it means that we're all in this together. So you can't come past judgment upon me. You don't know nothing about this thing. Right? Them know. I can listen to them. Go ahead. Sister Del. Andrea, Sister Del. Advice for me. You understand what I'm going through, right?
Okay.
First of all, tell me how to deal with Clarky. I need to know.
Tell what?
How to deal with Clarky.
Alright, that case is bigger than me. So the advice is about the kids, right?
Yeah, from as a kid.
Yeah, but you're not a kid anymore.
Right?
And now you can assess the situation in a different light. Right?
Okay.
And
that's what you did?
Yes, that's what I did.
All
because
right.
the situation was before coming into this church and before giving myself to Christ. Afterwards, I'm able to look at it from a different light, know that I am a Christian and I'm following what Christ has taught me. So I'm able to look at it and say that, oh, that person is out in the world. And the first and foremost thing is forgiveness. How many times has God forgiven me? In your case, they're just kids. As you said before, kids are very mean at times. And they don't know, they don't understand to the full extent that you as an adult will understand. No, confrontation is another step, but then I'm not sure if you know where any of those persons were. But
no, Mama, know what to them there right now.
You can, all right. You can call them, and you can just tell them you're not in an angry stage. You're just telling them, you know, when I was younger, I really felt bad about this situation. And just letting them know how you feel can do a lot. Okay. Without them even saying anything to you. Just getting it out there helps.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, sure.
Oh, okay. I was actually thinking not from your early childhood stage, but generally for me, how I would actually help you in getting over, everyone in the group, in getting over the hate is to actually take yourself out of a particular situation. Don't personalize anything.
Right.
Take yourself out of the situation and looking objectively and in a wider scope, because persons react to persons depending on the perspective that they're actually looking at. So if you think along that line and think of things objectively and try to see it from all angles, so to speak, you will have a better perspective as to how to actually deal with particular situations.
So step away
Yes.
sometime and look at it. All right? Bernie? I'll take Bernie and then you guys can see.
All right. Before using the Bible and using God's help, I had this thing where I just told myself that I can't keep these people up. I can't hate them because I need my peace of mind if I'm going to do everything that I want to do and be the kind of person that I want to be. However, since using the biblical format now, I said this now to myself, all right, it's not just about my peace of mind, it's about me showing love to other people as well, despite them not showing the same kind of love to me. So, as a fruit of the Spirit, I'm going to practice forbearance, since I consider myself somebody who has the Holy Spirit. So, I started just practicing forbearance. At first, forbearance to me never felt like full forbearance. It felt like I just did not care, right? But that was because I still had a piece of the old part that said, all right, I really don't care what you want to say or what you want to do because my peace of mind. And it was good for the moment, but it was selfish over time. So I added the love and the forbearance part to it, and that helped. And now I can't even hate anymore. And it's not because there's no more potential for hate, but when I look at it, sometimes I even pity you if you should say or do something, because there is something within you that you need to fix, and gladly for me, I have found the way to fix it, so I don't need to hate.
Very good.
And thanks to God. And plus, Auntie was saying something about pride, and that is true. A lot of the times we feel bad and we hate, and it's because of pride. And if we're going to practice the fruit of the Spirit as people with the Holy Spirit, we have to eradicate that part, or else we'll never, mostly won't sin.
Okay. Thank you very much. You guys can see. So that was a very good first session, right? Because for me personally, I heard a whole lot of things coming out there in terms of learning to separate yourself objectively from a situation, learning that a lot of times the hatred that we have is because of somebody else, and we have the choice to respond, and we can choose how to respond as well. Another thing that she touched on is the fact that carrying hatred is toxic. It has a whole lot of emotions, and it is a whole lot of chemicals that we're producing. This in itself, in terms of practicing to hate, changes over time how your brain is wired. And sometimes you don't see the implications for that. Right? But this is the format. So I'm going to go to the next one. Ready again. So now, we are trying. Okay, I'm going to do one more real quick, and then I'll go. I feel the anger coming out. All right. Love of money. Love of money. Is there any point in your life that you used to love money? Hi, my name is Ray, and I'm a Sinaholic. I used to struggle with the love of money. Hi, Ray.
Hi, Ray.
It's my first time here.
Welcome.
Thanks. How did it start? You guys are the worst ever. I'm never coming back to this class ever again. Oh my God. How did the love of money start for me? As a child, my parents were entrepreneurs, but they weren't rich. and they were struggling to provide for our family. And therefore, that same experience with these children made me realize the importance of money so that you can buy a new Nike to wear. And therefore, people will not ridicule you. And over the years, I started to love having money. My sisters will tell you right now, how was Ray as a child? You can't owe him not $1. From 7 years old, if he lent you $20 at 9 years old, he's going to say, remember that you owe me $20. And this became something of an obsession for me. So much so that when I was deciding as a child in high school what career I wanted, I said I wanted to be a doctor. And they were saying, why it is that you want to be a doctor? Because doctors have money. This was not about helping people. This was not about any social well-being. This was strictly about money. Needless to say, I experienced a wound with blood, and it was over after that. I'm very squirmish when it comes to that. So medicine was just off. But the point is that I had to learn, especially when I came into the church and I started to have my own business. I started to have to learn I can't make money the center of everything that I do. Because now I have to start giving up certain opportunities on the Sabbath. Money now starts to decrease in value. But it's something that I'm recovering from, and I might have a relapse. Especially as financial times get harder. As people start to lose their jobs. People can't afford food anymore. The love of money is something that might come back and might actually force me to break the Sabbath. Might not be the main reason, but it's definitely a danger. Many can sit. Thank you. Such a good sport today. Very silent, but good. But as I wrap up, I want us to start thinking about sin, the different sins that we have, as addictions that we're recovering from. Is it something that we've struggled from? Have we completely overcome it? Is there no relapse for us in the future? Are we helping others who are also recovering sinaholics? If we start to look at sin in that way, something that I struggle with, something that I can't overcome, what are some of the things that other people do to get me? First, I must admit that I have a problem. If I start saying to myself, it's something that I can deal with tomorrow, it's not that big a deal because I have other bigger ones. These are some of the things that people use to say that they don't have a problem. But the truth is, from you are a sinner, you have a problem. And you are a recovering sinaholic. I'm reminded by Matthew 24, 9 to 14 as I close. We ask the question, how does sin spread? We learn it. It is transferred to our children through generations. Things about our physical DNA change as sin enters. And Jesus warns in Matthew 24, 9 to 14, and because wickedness is multiplied, most men's love will grow cold. This is truth about the end times. We see wickedness increasing. And therefore, it also puts us at risk as sinaholics. And therefore, we must do everything as best as possible to guard our lives against sin. I encourage us, keep fighting until the end and continue to recover.